Welcome in another edition of Green and Growing. It is the Milwaukee Bucks beating the San Antonio Spurs 125 to 121. And we tweeted out earlier tonight that we're going to be doing this post-game podcast. People are like, boy, I wish you would have been on after the Pacers game. Have no fear. We'll get to the Pacers game too. We'll do that as we get a little bit more into this. Plus, all-star voting results, our early results are in. We can touch on those too before we get out of here. I was keeping an eye on Marzion's Twitter account throughout this game because I wanted to see the emotions that he was going through versus maybe what I was going through, because I was pretty pissed off watching this game. I was pretty pissed off watching the Pacers game. Now, I will tell you that I am the first one to tell you, and I've told friends of mine, dude, it's the regular season. Just calm down. Like, none of this matters until we get to the playoffs, and then we'll see. I'm going to tell you what I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about, playing young, athletic teams that can get out and run and provide more energy than apparently this Bucks team is capable of. I'm concerned about that. Now, again, Rockets are coming up, so we'll see if the same problem persists. But Indiana twice, now the Spurs, and you've got Popovich and timeouts going, hey, pretty much they put their pants on like we do. Quit being, starstruck by the Bucks and focus and just play the game the right way. So he was trying to calm his team down, and it worked. They even played Wembanyama at the end of the game, and it was a great duel between Wembanyama and Giannis. But what I don't like is lack of energy, lack of effort. Brook Lopez was not good at all, not running back on defense multiple times when I saw it. The one pass he threw to Compton that got blocked, he took a good half a second to a second before he made the pass. He should have caught that and whipped it right over there. He was open, took his time. I'll get it there eventually. And over there it gets, and then it gets blocked out of bounds. Lopez was infuriating to me tonight watching him play the game of basketball against the San Antonio Spurs. So, yeah, I'm pretty pissed off. The ending, very, very entertaining. Giannis hits back-to-back threes in a close game. If he misses them, I'm losing my mind currently on the post-game podcast for him taking those damn threes. But they went in. It's fine. Wemby with a huge block on Giannis. That got everybody excited. I saw Marzion tweeting he liked Wembanyama. That's good. Look, it's hard not to like Wembanyama. The dude's a stud, right? I mean, I get it. No big deal. Marzion, I'm done ranting for the time being. I have more, but I'll stop here so I don't take the whole podcast and talk the whole time. So your turn. Go ahead.
No, it was definitely frustrating, to see them struggle again on defense and a lot of the same stuff happening, and couple times where they're just like pressuring full court and you're like, what in the hell are you doing? Like, it just allows a very easy bucket down low. Yeah, Lopez was very frustrating to watch. It has been for the last couple of games of just not really bringing it on either end. And, ended up 9 points, 4 rebounds in 33 minutes. And so, yeah, he's been very frustrating. I thought the overall defense in the first half wasn't that bad. I thought the defense in the first half was the Spurs were hitting a lot of contested mid-range shots, which is what the defense is designed to kind of give up. And the Spurs were making them, and it was like, okay. And they got a little bit hot from three at the end of the half, or at the end of the first quarter. Second half, I thought the defense did get worse. I thought the defense allowed more inside stuff, and as you said, kind of allowed the Spurs to run on them a little bit more. I thought Dame had a pretty good defensive game overall. I mean, there was that one time he bid on a pump fake with Vassell, who had monster game as well. Credit to him. He had 34 points, 14 of 21 from the field, and 6 of 9 from three. But other than that, I thought Dame had a pretty good defensive game. And really everything except for the 3-point shot from Dame was good tonight. He had 10 assists. He had no turnovers. He was 9 of 13 from 2, where he was driving to the lane and, making his layups and stuff like that. Finished with 25 points, 10 assists, no turnovers. So I thought Dame had a really good game, just outside of the shooting, from the outside. And overall the bench too, it's so drastic. I tweeted that too. I was like, it's so easy to spot the drop off from the starters to the bench. As soon as the bench lineups come in and it's Giannis plus 4 bench guys out there, it just feels like, man, we have no firepower. We have nothing outside of Giannis. And getting Jay Crowder back will help that, but it's probably not fixing it. It's probably not completely changing it.
Marzion, what about starting the fourth quarter with Payne, Beasley, Beauchamp, Connaughton, and Lopez as your 5? That's what he started the fourth quarter with.
But it showed why he did that, because Dame and Giannis came in and scored 25 out of 26 points to win the game.
What about Middleton? Where was he? What did it show for them?
He was out. He was out for the second half. They announced he was out.
Right. And this was his first time playing back-to-back. And, oh, good, Middleton's going to play back-to-back. We're all excited. And then we get to the second half, and there's no Chris Middleton. So hopefully he's not hurt or something. Or
he's not.
They said
he's not hurt or anything. They said he's on the second night of a back-to-back. And if they hadn't played him, they would have gotten punished by the league with that all-star rule thing. And so they said they had it kind of designed that they wanted to play him in the first half, play him about half of his usual minutes, and then they'd rest him the rest of the way.
I thought the all-star rule was you couldn't rest 2 all-stars. So
I don't know. That's what
all-star that was resting.
That's what they said on the broadcast. They said something about how he was an all-star in 21.
Yeah.
And so they could have been subject to punishment for the league. That's what they said in the broadcast. I don't know. I don't know
went over that on this podcast. I thought it was you could have 2 all-stars at the same time.
I thought it was 2 as well. Maybe it was just it might have just been a design.
Whatever.
It might have just been a design.
Yeah. But that having those 5 guys out there, you were setting yourself up to have a problem. And that's exactly what happened. You ended up having a problem. And then on top of all of that, you start talking about inside in bench points. Look at Bucks Film Room tweeted this out earlier. Now this was before the game. The Bucks have given up 334 points in the paint in their last 5 games. That's 66.8 per game average, which is last in the NBA, 6 points behind the putrid Wizards. Last in the NBA. And Brook Lopez and Giannis are these great shot blockers and guys who can protect the rim. So what the hell is going on, Marzion?
Number one, it's a lot of that aggressive scheme that brings those guys out more, and that therefore outside of the paint, and then that's easier for teams to score in the paint as a result. And number 2, again, as much as good as Giannis and Brook are, they don't play every minute. And so when you have your backups come in, they've been really bad at defending the paint. Bobby is a terrible rim protector. And so as a result, every time the bench units come in, and it's Giannis or Dame out there or Chris out there with 4 bench guys, the rim protection's awful. And so in some of those stretches, and again, that's what I think I've seen most of the year is, the starting lineup hasn't been terrible defensively when they do have, Giannis, Brook, Chris all out there at the same time. It hasn't been terrible. Now they've had bad games. They were bad against the Pacers, even with the starters on the court and everything, but it's been much better than the minutes where you have Bobby out there with Payne and, one of Giannis, Chris or Brook or Dame instead of 2 or 3 of those guys. So it's a combination of both the scheme and then the bench units just really hurting their rim protection. And again, they've gone back to the drop at points, like the heavy drop at points, and bringing Brook lower back in the drop during this season, and it's worked decently well. And there's times they go a little bit back to the aggressive stuff, and it just doesn't seem to be working. It doesn't fit their personnel, and again, as a result, they're getting kind of shredded in the paint.
Rainbow Trout comments on the YouTube Odyssey Sports YouTube page where we're streaming. You can also, of course, download it, the audio version of this on your Odyssey app, or if you download your favorite podcast app. It says, Sparky, why was Adrian Griffin hired? Please be honest. Well, I'll tell you the same thing everybody else is going to tell you based on reports. That was Giannis's hire. Giannis wanted to play for a former NBA player. It's something he's apparently pretty adamant about. So if that was his hire, because of the last 3, he was the only former NBA player to my knowledge of the guys that were there. So Adrian Griffin got the job because Giannis wanted to get the job. And guess what? He's going to keep the job as long as Giannis wants him to keep the job as well. That's kind of how this whole thing is going to work going forward. And I got people asking me on Twitter, well, do you think they'll get rid of Griffin midseason? No, I don't. Look, this is the deal. Deal is, and in fact, I interviewed Keith Smith today with Spot Track and Front Office Show or whatever. And it'll be up on the 1250amthefan.com website tomorrow morning. Interviewed him earlier today. And you can go listen to it yourself. And I said about Griffin, I'm not going to freak out until we get to the playoffs. If we get to the playoffs and there's no adjustments and they get run out of the playoffs early because he's not making adjustments, then I agree. Then it's time to move on and go, and this was a mistake. But I'm going to give him his time and his space to figure this thing out throughout the course of the year, even though I was pissed watching this thing tonight. I was pissed watching the last 2 Pacers game. Like, I get why everybody's mad. Totally understand it. And you're all saying the same things that Nathan pretty much just said as well. So I understand why everybody is mad watching this, and everybody's expecting them to be better. But remember what? They had the second best record in the NBA coming into this thing, I think. So it's not like they suck. It's not like they're the 5th or 6th seed in the East and they're trying to figure things out while being that bad. They've won their fair share of games, and right now they're going through a thing where they look zapped of energy, and their defense is getting torn apart by younger, more athletic teams. Does that pretty much sum it up correctly, Nathan?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. And like you said, I mean, I don't think there's any realistic chance he's getting fired mid-season. So just stop asking for him to be fired. Like, stop even bringing that up. It's not happening this season. They're not firing him right away. If they lose early in the playoffs, then absolutely you can bring up fire Griffin and really talk about that. He's not getting fired. You can talk about what he needs to change. You can say, okay, I'm kind of skeptical. You can say they need to be better. They need to do this and that. But don't sit there and keep yelling, fire Griffin, fire Griffin. This is a mistake. Fire. It's like, it's not going to happen. Stop. Like, this is his season. They hired him. And I don't believe it was 100% just because Giannis liked him, because, he met with multiple players on that team. He met with Chris. They had several meetings together with players, and they came to that conclusion. I don't think that they would have hired this guy if it was just, well, he sucks, but Giannis likes him, so we're going to hire. Like, they wouldn't do that.
And what was Giannis's thoughts on Nick Nurse? I mean, that's the other thing, because there was a lot of talk that Giannis maybe didn't want Nick Nurse, who ended up going to Philadelphia, and obviously 76ers are playing pretty well right now. But even with Nick Nurse, Nathan, I think this defensive scheme is probably the same, because this is what they ran in Toronto. I would assume it's very similar to what he would have ran here in Milwaukee, even if Adrian Griffin wasn't the coach.
Yeah, people do forget that. I mean, he's literally Nick Nurse's assistant, so it's not like this would be a drastically different defense under Nick Nurse. Now, I think Nurse being a veteran, Nurse being, you trust him more. Yes, I get that. And I personally wanted Nick Nurse, but it's I don't know as much as they did. I don't, like, we weren't in those meetings. We didn't know what they talked about. We don't know what Giannis thought. We don't know all of this stuff. So at the end of the day, I'm like, I don't know about this coaching decision, but like, I just have to trust that they're making the right decision, that they did what was best for them. And you hope it works out. You hope he gets better throughout the season, and that they can maybe make a move to get him some better personnel, another defender to help this scheme a little bit. And you hope it works out at the end of the day. But like, again, stop yelling to fire Adrian Griffin. Like, you're just yelling into the void, because they're not going to fire the guy. It's not going to happen.
Let's talk about something else. When they hired Adrian Griffin and we had this conversation, my concern was the guys he coached under. Nurse tends to wear a team out. Thibodeau tends to wear a team out. Skiles tends to wear a team out, right? And not only does he wear them out, but by the time you get to the playoffs, their teams tend to be tired and tend to run themselves out of it by the time they get to that point. Do you think it's possible right now that this team is just tired from playing this defense they're playing? Brooke is tired of running all over the freaking place, trying to play this defense. And they're kind of like in that need of a real break right now to kind of rest their legs and kind of get themselves re-energized. Maybe they're just zapped kind of energy right now. And that's why this looks so bad.
I mean, again, that's some of it. And especially on the second night of a back-to-back, you are a little bit tired, and you're going against the last 3 games, you're going against 2 young teams that thrive on playing fast and thrive on pushing the ball in transition, and against a team that is a championship contender playing in early January that is just still kind of getting going. They're just not going to play as hard as they will come playoff time. And we saw them play much harder down the stretch of this game. Like, you can see the flips, the switch flip, where all of a sudden guys are closing out harder. Guys are getting back faster. Guys are really, really trying on the defensive end much harder when the game's on the line, and when it's like, okay, like let's get our shit together and do this thing. You can see that switch flip, and that's why I'm like, okay, it's not just that they all suck completely defensively. We've seen them several times this year, early on in the season especially. We've seen them so many times in the clutch play good defense, really ramp up the intensity, and like, okay, the starting lineup plays good defense, and so that leads me to believe that. Now, I don't think they'll be, with this team constructed as of right now. Like, I wouldn't ever expect them to be a good, consistent defense in the playoffs, but I think that they're going to be better than they have been in some of these regular season games, where the first 3 quarters, face it, like, it is not as important as a playoff game, and the players probably don't take it as important as playoff games and late in the games and intensity levels and all that stuff. You can think whatever you want about that. You can say, oh, you've got to bring it every night. But the reality is, it's an 82-game season. These guys know they're playing for a championship in April or in June, rather than winning every regular season game right now. So naturally, you're going to let up a little bit. And it's when you're playing against teams like Pacers or like the Spurs, who are, this is like they're not thinking about June. They're not thinking about the finals. They're not thinking about a playoff run. They're thinking about right here, right now, trying to win all these games. And this is not the only reason their defense is bad by any means. I'm not at all saying that, oh, they're just not trying, and as soon as they start trying, they'll be a great defense. No, but it's the part of it. And I think that you have to kind of take that into account a little bit and just accept that that's some of the reality, that they're not going to have that intensity level all the time in the regular season. And again, you hope that they make some personnel changes and can get to a better level than this. They're at a pretty bad level right now, allowing 120 all the time, 140 against the Pacers. You want it to be better than that. And, you hope it gets there. But for right now, that's kind of what they're stuck with a little bit.
And again, you look at numbers tonight. Giannis 19 of 28, 44 points, 14 boards, 7 assists on the night. Lillard 25, 10 assists, 1 of 6 from 3, and that was from I don't know, somewhere outside of the arena where he took that shot from. That was the only one he actually made in the game. Not a single person in double figures off the bench, as we talked about earlier. The closest is Beauchamp with 8 points, 3 of 8 shooting for the Spurs, 27 for Wembanyama in 26 minutes, 10 of 18, 9 boards for him, 34 for Vassell, 14 of 21, 6 of 9 from 3. 2 guys in double figures off the bench for the Spurs. Go back to that 3-point shooting for the San Antonio Spurs. At one point in that game, they talked to, I think it might have been early on in the game, I want to say, and they talked to Adrian Griffin about, his thoughts on the game. He said, well, we got to defend the 3 better, man. And nothing changed, man. Second half, guys were wide open with all the time in the world, taking their sweet time, taking threes. And the Bucks, to a certain degree, got lucky because you saw the Spurs. You had 2 or 3 guys miss wide open threes with all kinds of time, especially that last one. Wembanyama passed up an opportunity to kick it to the corner, and the guy missed a shot that was wide open. They didn't lose that game at the end because, the Bucks defense was stifling and wouldn't allow them a shot. They lost the game at the end because they couldn't hit a 3-point shot when they needed it. And meanwhile, the Milwaukee Bucks on their side of the floor couldn't, and they really haven't been able to really kind of get going where they were able to get into a rhythm with guys shooting threes. Lillard's been in a funk for a while now. And I said it during the Pacers game. We'll get to the Pacers game next, but dude, when Lillard struggles, it zaps energy out of this Bucks team. It's like they all kind of just come down to earth like, oh man, he's struggling tonight. It's going to be a long night. That's what it kind of feels like to me. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's not how it plays into their mindset, but that's what it feels like. And when Lillard gets going, I feel like they get going as a team as well.
Yeah. And as far as leaving shooters open, I will say that the 2 guys that they left open, the one that they kept leaving open was more by design, Jeremy Sohan, who's not a great shooter. He's improved this year, but it's still one of those like, okay, prove to me you can make some shots before we start guarding you. So that was kind of by design, especially when you have Wemby playing a really good game and Vassell playing a great game. You're going to gravitate even more towards those guys and say, if Jeremy Sohan and the guy left open on the last possession was Trey Jones, who's a 22% 3-point shooter. Like, in that last possession, I genuinely, like, when he shot that, I was like, fine, go ahead. Like, that is the same percentage essentially as Giannis taking a 3 at the end of a game. I'm like, go ahead. If he makes that, whatever. But like, I'm glad they ran at Devin Vassell. I'm glad they ran at Wembanyama to make sure those guys didn't get shots up. And it was like, I'll live with a Trey Jones 3. I will live with it. It looks like a bad possession. It looks like they got lucky, but like, that is by design. And then like, that's knowing your personnel. So I'm glad that I know those look super bad, but I wasn't too upset about those. And as far as Dame, again, people think he's been, there's a lot of recency bias with this stuff. I mean, if you ask people, like, it seems like he's been in a slump forever. For 20 games prior to the last 3 games he's played. So in the last 3 games, he's now 4 for 23 from 3. But in the 22 games before that, he was 41% from 3. So it's been 3 games of Dame really struggling from outside. And he's going to have games here and there where he struggles, whatever. That's every single player to ever exist. But I'm not super worried about it. I loved that tonight. And even in the second half of last night's game, or in the fourth quarter, a little bit of last night's game, he started going to he was going to the paint and finishing. He was finding other ways to kind of make an impact, and still ended up with 25 points, 10 assists, no turnovers in a game where he did really struggle from 3. But in that fourth quarter, he was getting to the rim at will. He was finishing. He showed you why you trade for a guy like that. Because in a game where he's shooting like crap and, normally, and I'm just using Drew as a comparison because that's who you traded. But when Drew would shoot like that in the playoffs, he's putting up 10, 12 points, and shooting 4 for 20 from the field and 1 for 6 from 3. Well, I mean, Dame ended up with 25 and 10 assists and no turnovers. Like, yeah, he shot bad from 3. That doesn't mean he had a bad game. And again, I thought he was pretty good defensively tonight. I thought he tried a little bit harder on that end than he normally does, or at least gave a little bit extra effort there. So I thought it honestly was overall a good Dame game. Even in that first half, I kind of said that. I was like, he hasn't shot much in the first half, but he's got 7 assists. He doesn't have a turnover. He's played better defense. Like, yeah, his shot's not going down, but whatever. Like, he'll get going. He'll eventually make shots. He's Damian Lillard, and if that's one of the bigger issues with this team is Damian Lillard shooting threes, and like, oh, is he going to get his 3-point shot going again? I mean, I'll take that issue all day long because that's going to fix itself very quickly.
He is Nathan Marzion. Follow him on Twitter at Nathan Marzion. Follow me at Sparky Radio. Bucks over the Spurs, 125-121 in the Giannis versus Wembanyama battle. A great battle there at the end of the game on TNT. You download this fine podcast on your Odyssey app, or if you download your favorite podcast app, you can also watch our stream lives on the Odyssey Sports YouTube page like we're doing currently here on Thursday night, or you go back and watch the videos later. Take a quick time, I'll come back. I want to talk about that Pacers game last night and what happened there, and should there be concern about a possible playoff matchup against the Indiana Spurs, or the Indiana Spurs, the Indiana Pacers. That's next here on the Green and Growing Podcast. Back on Green and Growing, Steve Sparky, Fifer, 1250 AM The Fan. Make sure to go check out 1250amthefan.com if you haven't here recently. Andy Herman, Back a Day podcast earlier this week, talking Packers football. Really good interview with him. Then we had Jake Kokorowski on the website today from Badger Extra, talking about a disappointing Badger football season. And tomorrow morning, Keith Smith will be up on the website. Interviewed him earlier today from Spot Track, talking about the Bucks, the Eastern Conference, and the NBA overall. Really good interview with Keith. Make sure to check that out too. He is Nathan Marzion. Follow him on Twitter at Nathan Marzion. Let's talk about the Pacers. Now they've won 4 of 5 against the Bucks. I had on Sirius XM NBA radio earlier today, and I was listening to Rick Hamla and Antonio Daniels talking about that Bucks Pacers game, that Bucks Pacers series. And Hamla is like, hey man, like, I don't want to face the Pacers if I'm the Bucks. Like that's not good. And you take the Celtics now in the East and And Antonio Daniels is like, no, wait a second here. If I would have asked you, Rick, back when the Lakers were done with that in-season tournament, who would you have taken against them in the West? You said they would have beat anybody except Denver. He goes, and now you're not going to say the same thing. He says it's January. It's a long season. Everybody's just got to chill out and relax and see what the Bucks look like when we get to that point. And fine, I'll give you that, and I'll say I agree. Wait, but man, like there is a big time problem with the Bucks against this Pacers team, and we could talk about youth, athleticism, shooting, whatever the case may be. Confidence, they have lots of confidence when facing this Milwaukee team right now, and they already have issues dealing with Spoelstra and Miami. It seems like they don't need more issues with another team where it's a possible 2-7 or something like that. And you got to deal with the Pacers in the first round, because I will tell you right now, I will be worried about that series if that's how this thing ends up lining up by the time they get to the playoffs. I'll tell you that right. And it's January. I know it's January, but they're not going to age 5 years apiece by the time we get there. And this Bucks team isn't going to get any younger, I don't think, at the trade deadline. So from that perspective, I get very concerned about if they have to match up with the Pacers. What about you, Nathan Marzion?
I very, very, very much hope that they face the Pacers in the playoffs, because
you like torture. That's what it is. You like torture. You want to put yourself through it.
It is. Now, do the Pacers have our number in the regular season so far? Absolutely. Of course. They've won 4 or 5. They absolutely, kicked our butts the last 2 games and, deserve to talk a little crap. They really, they punked us. They got us. Like, good for them. But facing a team that's young 5 times early in the regular season, you talked about this where you're like, early on, teams can play like this all the time. They can play this run and gun, fast pace, do that all, and they're going to be trying a little bit harder than the Bucks to win these games. And the first game, the Bucks didn't have Dame, and they should have won the game. They were up very late big and they just kind of choked down the stretch. But they didn't have Dame and they should have won that game. And if they had Dame, they would have won that game. So I don't look at it as like 4-1 domination. It was basically 3-2 if you take into account that they lost by a game by 2 points without Damian Lillard.
Well, the other time Giannis had 64, though. I mean, you can't rely on Giannis to get 64 in order to win basketball games against a team in a 7-game series.
No, but they had to change their entire defense to make sure he didn't do that, because the first three games he averaged 50. Now, the other thing that gets to what I was gonna say before is, if they're gonna double Giannis like that, I am going to trust that Damian Lillard is going to be better than he was those 2 games. I don't expect him to continue to shoot that poorly in a whole series against that team. So I think that would be much better. I think that they would be just so fired up to play that team. The intensity level is a totally different level that Indiana hasn't even experienced. So I would totally want that team in the playoffs. I think that you'd have time now to you'd have much more time to gel, get things together. You're not playing them all at the start of the season when you're kind of figuring things out and they're all amped up and they're all ready to play. I really want to play that team.
I'll be honest with you. We did our podcast after the first game. So the first game was New Year's Day. We did our podcast Tuesday, and we talked about the first game on New Year's Day. And I was convinced that when they came out Wednesday, this was going to be a motivated, pissed off Bucks team. Because Giannis even talked about after the game, like, hey, man, we lose 4. I mean, you lose 4 in a series. Bucks haven't lost 4 to a team. I don't know when the last time that happened was. I haven't seen that stat, and maybe it was out there and I missed it. But I couldn't tell you the last time with Giannis, they lost 4 times in a season to somebody in a regular season. So I thought for sure, okay, they're going to come out in Indiana, fired up, motivated, and put it on them and make sure they realize who the better team is. And it did not happen. It did not happen. And instead, you allowed the Pacers to feel even more confident. I mean, Halliburton's at the line going, 1. Y'all got 1 game in the regular season. 1 game. That's what y'all got. Running his mouth. Wisconsin kid, obviously feeling himself because he grew up here, he's watched the Bucks, whatever. I'm sure loves the fact that they're beating Giannis and the Bucks. You said they're going to come out fired up and do something in the playoffs. I hope so. But I'll tell you this much, and we don't know what Adrian Griffin's going to do. But if you're going to tell me it's Adrian Griffin versus Rick Carlisle in the playoff series, I don't like my chances if it comes down to X's and O's and coaching decisions. Now, I like my chances when it comes down to best player in the series. That's still Giannis, obviously. Second best player in the series, providing he's shooting well, is Damian Lillard. Then it's Halliburton at that point. So based on talent, the Bucks should still win that series. But if we're talking close games and having a diagram plays and do different stuff late in games, I don't know, man. I don't know where I'm at on that right now. Maybe I'll change, but Carlisle's got a title. Carlisle's been in these things a million times over, just like if you get matched up against Spoelstra. That's why we go back to talking about Adrian Griffin as far as, hey, look, if you want to ask for Adrian Griffin to get fired, fine. Let's wait and see what happens in the playoffs to go from there. That would be the fear factor, I think, going into this thing, Nathan, in a playoff series against a Carlisle or a Spoelstra, would be how does he handle late game situations in tight games when they're in it?
Yeah, no, I mean, of course, and that's something that he's honestly looked pretty good with it so far this season. I mean, the Bucks have been one of the best clutch time teams. They've been much better than they were offensively in the clutch with Bud and Drew. So I mean, I get it. Yeah. And I'm not saying I love the coaching matchup. I just believe that this Bucks team would be, it's a totally different game in the playoffs. It's not You're even right. Like, it's almost a different sport. Like, it's just, It is, you can say, okay, yeah, they should have came out fired up on Wednesday. And yes, they should have. And it's not like they got absolutely beat down from the get-go, but I mean, they were up at half, but they, the reality is it's not the playoffs. This isn't something like Halliburton can talk all that stuff about one game and he can be talking in line. It's like, dude, it's January. It's January 3rd. Like, go ahead and talk. But this team would be fired up. This team would be, have a totally different intensity level. I mean, I like the Giannis matchup, obviously, in that matchup. And if you're going to stop Giannis, it's going to leave other guys open. And, again, you would just trust that Dame's going to knock down the shots that he missed, especially the ones last game. He missed like 6 shots that went in and out. And it was just like, man, it's just not his day. It's just not going in. It's just a little off right now. You would trust that he's got that stuff ironed out. You'd trust that for the most part, he's going to shoot well. And, I don't fear teams like that as much because it's like, at the end of the day, if you can't beat that team, you're not winning the title to begin with. So like, I want to go through them. I want I want to beat them. And that could, totally propel them to being like, hey, we took down that team that just got 4 from us in the regular season. And that, carries them further in the playoffs. Again, stuff like that I just doesn't worry me as much. Now if I could avoid Boston, great. That's totally different because I'm like, I don't know that they can get by Boston. And, it's like, I'd rather just avoid playing them. But the Pacers, stuff like teams like that, it's like, not like, give me them. And I trust that our guys with the talent level difference would be able to shut them up and get past them.
They're not going to get by much of anybody if Brook Lopez doesn't play better than he did tonight in the last game because he was awful. I got one more for you. I want to get to the All-Star voting, early All-Star voting results in the next segment here. Do you think between now and the playoffs, this defense will change a lot? Between now and the playoffs, if this defense struggles?
It all depends on. It mainly depends on if they make a trade. Like, as far as, are you talking scheme or are you talking the performance level?
Scheme. Do you think Brendan will change if this doesn't get better?
I think it would have to change a little bit, and we've seen him change it some. It's not like he's done the exact same thing. We saw them make adjustments. Yes. We see him go to the zone and do stuff like that. That just stuff that Bud would not do. Again, that's just not something Bud would ever do. So I do think it would have to be changed a little bit. I don't know if it would be changed, to the point people want. I don't know if it would be totally overhauled or anything like that. But I would have to think it changes a little bit if it continues like this. Like, because if you keep looking up and you're like, okay, we're still 20th in defense, like, you'd have to think that at some point you're like, okay, it's been half the season, we're still 20th in defense. We got to change some things. We got to tweak some things. Or, again, get better personnel in here and see how that works. And if that's still not working, then you definitely have to change some things. So, yeah, I'd have to think that if it continues like this, naturally you'd have to think that it's going to change, because the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results, you would think that they'd be like, hey, let's change up some things. But we also thought the same thing when you watched Jimmy Butler torch Jrue Holiday all playoffs. You would expect that a team would naturally change that matchup, and the Bucks did not. So you never know. Coaches sometimes can do dumb things.
All right, you can just look up insanity in the dictionary and find a picture of Joe Barry, and you'll see exactly what you're talking about. All right, I'll take a quick time. I'll come back on the other side, talk about these early All-Star voting numbers in, and see if these make any sense or if the fans have managed to screw it up yet again on the first fan balloting that's come in. He is Nathan Marzion. Follow him on Twitter, Nathan Marzion. Follow me at Sparky Radio. Check out my latest interviews, one-on-one interviews I've done up at 1250 amthefan.com. Download this fine podcast on your Odyssey app, or if you download your favorite podcast app. And of course, you can stream us live on the Odyssey Sports YouTube page when we do these bad boys, or also go back and watch them on YouTube at a later date. Tell your friends, tell your family members, follow, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, all that fun stuff. Back after this. Back on the Green and Growing podcast, Steve Sparky Fifer with you, along with Nathan Marzion. Bucks get a win over the San Antonio Spurs. Giannis with a big night. Him and Wembanyama duel it out at the end. Giannis with a couple of big threes. Wembanyama with a big block on Giannis. All that fun stuff, and the Bucks figure out a way to win that game. We talked about that in the first segment for about the first 15, 20 minutes of the podcast. The second segment, we got in talking about the Bucks and Pacers and what that thing has looked like. And now here in the last segment, we're talking about these early All-Star voting results that have come in. To nobody's surprise, Nathan, follow Nathan Marzion at Nathan Marzion on Twitter. Follow me at Sparky Radio. Giannis, number one in front court votes, 2.1 million. Joel Embiid, 1.8 million. Then Tatum, Jimmy Butler, Jaylen Brown, Bam Adebayo, Mikal Bridges, Porzingis. They have 3 Celtics players in the top 8 in voting. Kyle Kuzma and Paolo Banchero at 10. Anything stand out or surprise you in the front court for the Eastern Conference, Marzion?
I think Jimmy Butler is a little surprising with how high, because he's missed some time, right? He's been
battling injuries.
Jimmy's missed some time. I mean, Kuzma puts up numbers on a bad team, but I guess if you want to go by just numbers, I think he's averaging like 20-something points, and so I understand a little bit why he's on there. But as far as like a winning type of player, no, he's not a guy. But yeah, I mean, it's very cool to see Giannis number one overall in the voting, like over LeBron James, which has not happened before. So that's pretty cool to see. Other than that, I don't
And
really
it's
have
early
much.
too. Guards in the Eastern Conference, Tyrese Halliburton and Damian Lillard 1-2. Lillard at 955,000 and second, in front of Trae Young at 873. Then Donovan Mitchell at 624. Tyrese Maxey fifth at 480,000. Then Brunson, LaMelo Ball, Derek White, DeMar DeRozan, and Drew Holiday for the Celtics 10th. Those Boston fans vote, obviously. I am surprised that Tyrese Maxey is fifth. I'll be honest. Of that top five, I thought Maxey would get more love and be higher kind of up just because of all the love that dude gets nationally about how well he's been playing this year, Nathan.
Yeah, for a second, I thought you were going to say you thought he'd be lower. But yeah, I agree. I think he could be definitely above Donovan Mitchell, possibly above Trae Young, but Trae Young is averaging like 30. So I'm not super surprised that, obviously Dame is the bigger name. He's going to get a bunch of love. Tyrese is having the great year. He's going to be up there. I think it's pretty accurate, other than Maxey could be like a spot or two higher. To me,
he's not even close. Look at the numbers. He's 140,000 votes behind Donovan Mitchell in fourth. 140,000. He's almost double, not doubled, but he's 400,000 votes behind Trae Young in third. It's not even close. He doesn't even have 500,000 votes. And Philadelphia is not a small market. We're not talking about Milwaukee. Like, are they not watching 76ers basketball over there? Embiid has 1.8 million, yet they don't vote for Tyrese Maxey. I don't get it. 76ers fans need to help me out on what the hell is going on with that one. Western Conference, like Nathan said, LeBron's got 2 million. He's about 100,000 votes behind Giannis overall. Kevin Durant, 1.8 million. The Joker, 1.6 million. Then there's a big fall off. Then Anthony Davis at 988. Then it's Kawhi, Paul George, Sanguin, Wembanyama in 8th, Holmgren, and Karl Anthony Towns. I don't know. I'll be honest. I thought coming in, Wembanyama would have way more of a fan vote, similar to like what LeBron did his rookie year and so forth. With all the fanfare this dude had coming in, I thought he would have way more of an impact. But I think because his team sucks, and because now they're going to limit his minutes, I think that all plays into it, Nathan.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I agree. I definitely expect him to be a little bit higher on here. I'm surprised that Sengun has more votes than Wembanyama. Not that Sengun doesn't, Sengun's been awesome this year, but a little bit surprising.
Yep.
Obviously, okay, yeah, Jokic deserves to be number one here, but it's not surprising that he's not, given that it's LeBron and KD ahead of him. Other than that, nothing too surprising here. Like Chet's getting some love. Paul George is a pretty big name. Kawhi's a big name. AD is a big name. So those guys you all kind of just expect to be up there, and they've been playing pretty good.
And lastly, the guards in the Western Conference: Luka 1.4, Steph 1.3, SGA 966,000, Harden, Kyrie, Anthony Edwards. I thought he'd be way higher, 289,000 only. John Morant. Again, he just started playing after the suspension. De'Aaron Fox is having a great year, and he's been kind of forgotten about in Sacramento. Klay Thompson and Austin Reeves in 10th. Get out of here. For me, I just thought SGA again. It's OKC. I get it. So he's stuck, but he's having a hell of a year. Oklahoma City's playing really well right now, and I thought he'd get more votes. Not saying that he deserves to start over Steph or Luka, but he's having a hell of a year right now.
Oh yeah, he's been. And I think that this is definitely the top three that I expected in that order. I expected Luka to be number one, maybe Curry number one. It's close, but I expected those two to be neck and neck, and then Shea a little bit behind him. But yeah, Shea's had an amazing season, so he definitely deserves a nod. It probably should be Shea and Luka in the backcourt for the All-Star game, to start. But it's probably going to go to Curry. And again, not that Curry's been bad by any means this year, but just I think Shea's been
Golden
so
State
good.
And it's good.
Yeah, Golden State's not been good. Shea and Luka have just been, I think, a little bit better than him. But again, it's Curry. You kind of expect that he's going to have that bump with how well known he is. Kyrie's been hurt, so that's a little him at 5. But again, he's a big name. Yeah, definitely expected Anthony Edwards to get more love. He seems. Again, when you look at his numbers, it's nothing like insane. For what they talk about with him, like as far as him taking a huge leap and everything, but it's still very good.
One seed in the West, but they're the 1 seed in the West, and Karl Anthony Towns is 10th in the front court in the West. And Alex and whatchamacallit, Anthony Edwards is 6th. I mean, my God, they're the 1 seed. They better get at least somebody on this damn all-star team one way or the other. I mean, one of these two better make the damn team.
They'll for sure get at least one guy in. Like Edwards is 100% getting in. It's just a matter of he's probably not going to start, but he'll get in. And then Ja has been, obviously suspended for most of the time. Klay Thompson is totally on there because of name recognition, because he has not been that good this season. He's putting up like 16 points on barely over 40% shooting. So, and he doesn't do much as far as rebounds or assists. And then, Austin Reeves too. Like that's a very surprising one because he hasn't been like, he's ended the season last year really well. This year he's been, fine, like 15 a game. But just nothing that's to me all-star worthy or worthy of being, up there with those guys. Again, the fact that Austin Reeves is that close to Anthony Edwards to me is pretty crazy. They are 100,000 off, but it's not that much compared to how far off other ones are at the top. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's Luka, Steph, and Shea are definitely the clear top 3 in this, and then I would probably go Edwards number 4, and then maybe like Fox number 5.
Yep, I agree with you. He is Nathan Marzion. Follow him on Twitter at Nathan Marzion. Follow me at Sparky Radio. Marzion, you got any travel plans for the weekend? Where are we going this weekend? What's the plans? What are we doing?
I don't have any travel plans this weekend, I don't think. Kind of chill weekend. One of my friends is in town, so we're going to go out and have some drinks. And then I'm trying to think. Next week, I'm going to the Bucks Celtics game. And yeah.
Ooh, good one. Oh, that'll be a good one. Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. Yeah. That's a lot of fun there. All right, he is Nathan Marzion, Steve Sparky Fifer. Thanks for tuning in. Another edition of Green and Growing Podcast. Downloading your Odyssey app, where you download your favorite podcast at. Check us out on the Odyssey Sports YouTube page as well. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll talk to you again next week. Have a good weekend. Go Pack, go.